let's now tackle the first topic of the webinar series, that's job order costing. So again, I am Sir Brian, your lecturer for today. Now, let's start our discussion by determining what is the nature of job order costing. So, sino ba ang gumagamit ng ganitong klaseng costing system, no? Or anong mga negosyo or businesses ang gumagamit ng job order costing? So, when we say job order costing, it is the process of determining the total cost of each job. Remember that the main objective of cost accounting is to properly account and determine the cost of a certain cost object. So the cost object in this topic is the job, right? So pag sinabi nating job, it is also known as projects. Okay? What are the following features of job order costing? Number one, under this costing system, the products are produced only in accordance with customer's order and not for maintaining stock for sale. So ibig sabihin, ito yung costing system na appropriate sa mga business na may nature na magpo-produce lang sila kapag may customer orders, di ba? Kasi pag walang customer orders, hindi rin sila makakapag-produce because they need the instructions. Right? Kailangan nila yung instructions ng customer kung paano gagawin dito sa project na to. For example, since I am engaged in bookshops and publishing services, yung mga book printers, yan, mga gumagamit yan ng job order costing. Why? Because each customer has their own sets of instructions. So si book printer, susundan niya yung gusto ng customer, right? Hence, so each job na ginagawa ng book printer ay may sariling tinatawag nating job cost sheet kasi they are separate projects, right? So yung cost ng isang project ay ibang-iba sa cost ng ibang projects ng business. Okay? Next feature. So in connection with number one, a job is performed according to the customer's specifications or instructions. Susunod lang si business doon sa gustong mangyari ng customer. Number three, the costs are accumulated to each job separately. Like I said, each job is unique. No? Hindi natin pwedeng ipaghalo yung cost ng isang job sa ibang jobs or projects because yun nga unique sila, right? So paano ba ina-accumulate ng mga negosyo na gumagamit ng job order costing ang mga cost ng mga projects nila? That would be in a separate job cost sheet. So let's say for example, the business has 4 projects. Therefore, meron siyang 4 na job cost sheet. So each job cost sheet will be assigned to each job. Okay? Now, para mas ma-explain natin ang magiging procedures in a job order costing environment, let us answer our handout. Okay? So problem number 1 tayo. So I hope meron na kayong copy ng handouts natin para masundan nyo yung gagawin natin on screen. So for problem number 1, we have 5 requirements. No? So this is the Van Dyne Company, uses a job order costing system, and the following information is available from its records. So we are provided the information on the raw materials, direct labor per hour, and overhead application rate. The company has 3 jobs in process, namely job 101, 102, and 103. So may 3 jobs siyang in process, no? So direct materials were requisitioned for each job as follows: 30, 25, and 25% respectively. The remaining balance of the requisitions was considered indirect. Direct labor hour per job are 2,500, 3,1, and 4,2 respectively. Indirect labor is 33,000. Other actual overhead costs totaled 36,000. So ang first requirement sa atin is, what is the prime cost of job 101? So bago natin masagot yan, class, okay, we will be doing our job order analysis, no? So isang table lang gagamitin natin, guys, para masagutan ang mga requirements natin. Okay? So paano po natin gagawin ang job cost analysis? So first, since there are 3 jobs, each column will be assigned for each job. So job 101, job 102, and job 103. Then for the last column, this will be for the grand total, no? Set up lang natin yan for their grand totals. Remember, in cost accounting, we have 3 components of a product cost: materials, labor, and manufacturing overhead. So yan lang po ang i-analyze natin dito sa job order costing. So direct materials, direct labor, and manufacturing overhead. Okay? Then kapag pinagsama-sama natin yung tatlong yan, ang tawag natin dyan ay total product cost. But in the context of job order costing, we will be calling this as total job cost. Okay? So let's start. So ang sabi dito, when it comes to direct materials, 30% daw kay job 101, 25% kay job 102, and another 25% for job 103. So magkano po ba ang total materials use? Sabi sa table, 120,000, right? So kunin natin ang 30% ng 120,000, that would be 36,000. Lagay yan natin sa job 101, then 25% for job 102 and 103. So magkano ba ang 25% ng 120,000? That would be 30,000. Okay? So pag pinag-add natin ito, magkano ang total direct materials used by the 3 jobs? This will become 96,000. Now, di ba ang total raw materials used is 120,000? Pero bakit 96,000 lang yung naging total ng direct materials? That is because, sabi dito sa problem, the remaining is considered indirect materials. So yung difference between 120,000 and the 96,000 will be considered as indirect materials. Pakitandaan yon. Okay? Mamaya natin sila i-account. Next one, direct labor hours per job. Ayan. So for job 101, that is 2,500 hours. Eh magkano ba yung direct labor per hour natin based on the table? 8.50 per hour. So simply multiply the number of direct labor hours per job by the direct labor per hour na 8.50. So we will be getting magkano kay job 101? That would be 21,250. For job 102, 26,350. And for job 103, magiging 35,700. So magkano ang total direct labor cost natin? That would be 83,300. Do you follow? Next. Indirect labor, 33,000. So paki-underline mo na yan, babalikan natin yan later on. And the last sentence of the second paragraph is other actual overhead costs totaled 36,000. Okay. So nabanggit dito yung other overhead costs natin, which is 36,000. Now, we have already accounted materials and labor. How do we account for your manufacturing overhead here? Answer, in a job order costing environment, we are using the normal costing system. Sir, ano yung normal costing system? Pag normal costing system ang pinag-uusapan natin, we will be assigning each job with their actual direct materials, and actual direct labor. But when it comes to the manufacturing overhead, we will be assigning them their applied overhead. Okay? Ano yung applied overhead? That is equal to the basis, di ba? The basis of your applied overhead by multiplied by overhead application rate. So paano natin kukunin ang applied overhead natin dito? So tawagin natin itong manufacturing overhead applied. Sabi dito, overhead applied based on direct labor cost, 120%. So meaning, kung magkano yung direct labor cost, we will be multiplying it by 120% to determine the applied overhead. So for job 101, simply multiply 21,250 by 120%. So magkano yon? That will be 25,500. Ganun lang po ang gagawin natin sa last two jobs, no? So 120% of 26,350, magkano yon? 31,620. And for job 103, 35,700 times 1.2, that will be 42,840. So magkano ang total applied overhead natin dito? That would be 99,960. Since nakumpleto na natin yung tatlong elements ng product cost, simply summarize each job. No? Determine natin yung total cost ng kada isang job dito. So for job 101, how much is its total cost? That will be 82,750. Job 102, 87,970. And job 103, 108,540. So the total cost of the three jobs is 279,260. Nagkakaintindihan po ba tayo? Okay? Ayan. So, kumpleto natin yung job analysis natin. So, dito lang po natin kukunin yung mga sagot ng mga requirements. Okay? Number 1. Tinatanong tayo, what is the prime cost of job 101? So, ano nga ulit ang formula ng prime cost? Based on your basic cost accounting, prime cost is equal to the sum of direct materials and direct labor, right? But since yung tinatanong ay yung kay job 101, kuhain lang natin yung total direct materials cost ng job 101, pati yung kanyang direct labor cost. Okay? So ito po yung magiging prime cost ng job 101. So direct materials, 36,000 plus direct labor, 21,250. So how much is the total prime cost? That would be 57,250. So ito po sagot natin for number 1. Number 2, how much overhead is applied to work in process? So, saan natin pwedeng makita yung total overhead applied? Dito po. Yan, yung third row natin. Tama? Pero, ang tinatanong, yung na-apply daw sa work in process. Pag sinabi nating work in process, lahat ng jobs na in process pa. Okay? So, ano po magiging sagot natin sa number 2? This is found in this column. So ito po ang number 2 natin, guys. Sagot ay 99,960. Okay? Next, number 3, what is the total amount of actual overhead? Okay, tinatanong tayo ng actual overhead. So alamin lang natin lahat ng actual overhead cost. So to refresh, ano nga ulit yung mga overhead costs? These are indirect costs. Or in other terms, these are costs that cannot be classified as either direct materials or direct labor. Okay? So ano-ano ulit yung mga na-identify nating overhead costs kanina? Number 1, indirect materials. Magkano nga ulit ang indirect materials natin? That is the difference between total raw materials used and total direct materials used. So our total indirect materials amounts to 24,000. Right? Next, indirect labor. I believe given agad ito sa problem, kopyahin lang natin. That is 33,000. Right? And may nakikita pa akong other overhead costs. So other overhead, yan ay magkano? 36,000. Okay? So usually yan lang po yung components ng ating manufacturing overhead. So magkano ang ating total actual overhead? So that would be 93,000. Yan naman po ang sagot natin sa number 3. Ako ba yung nasusundan? Okay? Di ba? Next. Number 4, how much is the over or under applied overhead? So for number 4, naman, para ma-compute natin yung over or under applied overhead, we will be comparing the actual overhead and the applied overhead. Okay? Compare lang natin yan. Now, ano rule natin? Paano malalaman kung ito ay under or over applied? Okay? So ito po ang rule natin. If the actual overhead is higher than applied overhead, anong tawag natin sa magiging difference niya? That would be under applied overhead. Bakit siya tinawag na under applied overhead, guys? Kasi kulang ang nai-apply or kulang yung napasok sa work in process natin. Okay? Next, what if it's the other way around? What if the actual overhead is lower than applied overhead? Anong tawag natin dyan? Since mas malaki na yung applied kaysa sa actual, ibig sabihin, over-applied na yung overhead natin. Gets? So pag over-applied naman, ibig sabihin, nasobrahan sa pag-apply ng overhead sa work in process. Or sobra yung naipasok na manufacturing overhead sa work in process. Gets? So to compute number 4, magkano yung actual overhead natin? 93,000 versus applied overhead of 99,960. How much is the difference? We will be getting 6,960. Anong tawag natin sa 6,960 na ito, guys? Is it under or over-applied? It will be over-applied. Kasi mas mataas yung applied overhead in this case, right? So this is an over-applied overhead. So yan naman po ang sagot natin sa number 4. Okay? Then lastly, number 5, if job 103 is completed and transferred, what would be the balance in the work in process inventory at the end of the period? So sabi dito sa number 5, assuming job 103 is completed and transferred, what will be the balance of our work in process inventory? Ano ba ang concept ng work in process inventory? Nandito lahat ng cost ng jobs na in process pa rin as of the end of the period. So since tapos naman yung job 103, ibig sabihin yan, aalisin na yung kanyang total cost sa work in process account at saan malilipat? Finished goods inventory na. Right? So sino na lang yung natira sa work in process? Those are job 101 and job 102. So to answer our, wait lang Ano ba magandang kulay? Sige, ano na lang, green na lang para makita niyo yung gagawin ko. So ang i-include lang natin to answer number 5, that will be the total cost of job 101 plus the total cost of job 102. So kuhain lang natin ito sa table natin. Si job 101, 82,750 and job 102, 87,970. So magkano yung work in process inventory end natin? So that would be magkano? Is that 170,720? Yan. So for number 5, ang sagot naman natin ay 170,720. Nagkakaintindihan po ba tayo? Okay? Yun. So yun ang tatandaan natin ha. The work in process inventory contains all the cost of in process jobs pa. Okay? Yung job 103 malilipat na yan sa finished goods inventory. I hope everything is clear for problem number 1. Okay? All right? So that's for the basic concepts of job order costing. Ngayon, dagdagan natin, no? Dagdagan natin, gawin nating challenging, di ba? Gawin natin challenging this time. Ngayon, pasukan natin siya ng concepts ng production losses. Yung kanina kasi walang losses, right? Ngayon, pasukan natin. So when it comes to production losses, take note, there are 2 types of production loss. Meron tayong tinatawag na normal and abnormal loss. Reviewin natin yung standards ng inventory, which is your IS2. Diba? Ang sabi sa IS2, normal loss will form part of the cost of the inventory. Okay? So ang treatment natin sa normal loss will be product cost. Okay? While your abnormal loss will be treated as a period cost. Ang normal loss, yan ay may include sa manufacturing overhead natin. Okay po? So doon po yun papasok sa manufacturing overhead. Now, let us determine what will be the appropriate treatment of normal loss in job order costing system. Okay? So paano ba natin tinitreat ang mga normal loss sa job order costing? First, alamin lang muna natin kung ano ba ang pinanggalingan netong normal loss na to. Is it due to internal failure or due to customer specifications? Pag sinabi nating due to internal failure, this is attributable to the production process of the company. Kumbaga, inherent na siya sa production. Hindi na siya naiiwasan. Di ba? Example, luma na yung machine. So nangyayari, may mga units siyang nagiging loss units na. Which is hindi na naiiwasan because yun nga, luma na yung machine. Right? So that's one of the examples of internal failure. Pag customer specification naman, kaya ka nagkaroon ng loss units kasi maarte yung customer mo. Di ba? Maarte. Maraming instruction siya magsabi. Sasabihin niya, for example, uy, gusto ko maging ganitong shade siya ng maroon na dapat eksaktong ganitong shade. Pag hindi yan eksakto, pakiulitin nga. Ayan. Nakukuha ba? Yon. So, ano ba magiging treatment natin if the normal loss is due to internal failure? That loss will be charged to production. Ibig sabihin, aabsorbin ni company yung loss mo, ay yung loss niya. Right? Aabsorbin ni company yung loss na to. So saan niya po yan ipapasok, sir? Papasok niya yan as part of manufacturing overhead. Okay? And take note, the budgeted overhead should include what we call allowance for losses. How do we determine this allowance for losses? Our basic formula for your loss is, number 1, It's either the spoilage or loss cost, di ba? Estimated yan, less residual value. Teka, ibahin natin, wag residual. Sabihin na lang nating recoverable. Recoverable amount. So that is how you will compute for your allowance for losses. Okay? So si company, mag-estimate siya ng cost ng spoilage or ng loss units. Then, ide-deduct niya yung ine-estimate niyang magiging recoverable amount. Ano itong recoverable amount na ito? Ito po yung amount na mare-recover kapag ito ay dinispose. Di ba? Pag ito ay dinispose through sale, may mare-recover siya. Pero, most likely, hindi niya mare-recover in full yung loss. Okay? That's why, nagde-deduct tayo ng recoverable amount for that. Okay po? Nasusundan? So that's for normal loss due to internal failure. What about if the normal loss is due to customer specification? Ano magiging treatment natin? That loss will be charged to the job itself. Meaning, sisingilin mo yan sa customer mo. Okay? So kapag yung normal loss ay due to customer specification, normally, tataas yung cost ng job na yon. Kasi sisingilin mo nga yan kay customer or sa client mo. Then, the budgeted overhead should not include allowance for losses. So tandaan nyo po, kapag ang case ay due to internal failure, we will be including allowance for losses in our budgeted overhead. If the loss is due to customer specification, we should not include allowance for losses. Nagkakaintindihan po tayo. Alright? So these are your accounting treatments for normal losses. I hope everything is clear, class, right? Sir, what about abnormal loss? Ano treatment ng abnormal loss? So kapag yan ay abnormal loss, diretso yan sa loss mo. Loss agad siya. Hindi siya kabilang sa product cost. Di ba lahat ng period cost ini-expense natin immediately? Ganon din sa abnormal loss. It will be expensed immediately na. Okay? Now, let's answer the second problem. So this is lang incorporated. So dito, pinapakompute tayo ng predetermined overhead rate if the spoilage is inherent in production and predetermined overhead rate if the spoilage relates only to a specific job. So lang incorporated produces product X. For 2024, lang incorporated estimated the following. The cost of a unit of product X is 80. During the production period, 150 units of product X are considered spoiled. Each spoiled unit of product X can be sold for 64 pesos. Okay. So how do we analyze the problem number 2? So isang table lang po gamitin natin guys para masagutan natin itong case 1 and case number 2. So number 1 and number 2. Now, let us compute for the estimated overhead muna. No? So let's start with overhead cost, which is exclusive of spoilage. Number 1 muna tayo. Mamaya na si number 2. So lagay natin 1.2 million. Okay? Sa number 1, the spoilage is inherent in production. So ano ba yung sinabi natin kanina kapag inherent na sa production yung normal loss natin? We should include allowance for spoilage. So mag-a-add tayo ng allowance for losses. In this case, allowance for spoilage. Okay? How do we compute for your allowance for spoilage? So that would be estimated spoilage cost. Magkano yon? 100,000 less estimated sales value of spoiled materials. Magkano? 40,000. Deduct natin yan kasi recoverable amount yan, di ba? So magkano ang ating allowance for losses or spoilage? 60,000. So yan po ilalagay natin dito. 60,000. Okay? Now, kindly compute for your adjusted overhead costs. That will become 1.26 million. Tama? And this will be divided by direct labor hours. Ilan ba yung direct labor hours natin? 40,000. So, paki-divide nga ito ng 40,000 direct labor hours to answer number 1. That will become 31.5 per direct labor hour. So, for number 1, sagot natin 31.50 per direct labor hour. Then for number 2, the spoilage relates only to a specific job. Ano ang concept nga ulit natin dito? Do we include or do we not include allowance for losses if the loss is related to customer specification or specific job? Answer, we do not include allowance for losses. Why, sir? What's the logic behind bakit hindi natin siya ini-include? We do not expect this loss. Hence, we do not include that. Right? Yung sa number 1 kasi ini-expect na natin eh. Kaya, ini-include natin siya sa overhead cost natin. Right? So for number 2, computin ulit natin yung adjusted overhead cost. That will be 1.2 million. Hindi na tayo mag-a-add ng allowance for losses. Hence, your adjusted overhead cost is simply equal to 1.2 million. Divided by 40,000 direct labor hours. Magkano sagot sa number 2? That will be 30 pesos per direct labor hour. So for number 1, sagot natin is 31.5 per direct labor hour. For number 2, 30 pesos per direct labor hour sagot natin. Nagkakaintindihan po ba tayo? 'Di ba? 'Yon, in-apply lang natin lahat nung diniscuss natin na concepts sa problem. I hope everything is clear. Let us proceed to the next problem. Meron palang table. Sige. Yan. Next, problem 3. So for problem number 3, this is a case of spoilage or spoiled goods. And there will be 2 cases. Maganda yung problem kasi comprehensive siya, no? Meron kang case 1 that is due to internal failure and case number 2 attributable to customer specifications. Let's start. Princeton Company's job 143 for the manufacturing of 4 coats was completed in September at unit cost presented as follows. Yan. So, obserbahan nyo class, no? Or obserbahan nyo, nasanay na ako sa class. Ang overhead natin, may laman siyang allowance for spoilage amounting to 2 pesos per unit, no? So, underline or highlight nyo yan. Final inspection of job 143 disclosed 400 spoiled coats which were sold to a jobber for 12,000. Yan. Ang gagawin natin is, since pare-pareho lang naman yung tinatanong per case, what if sagutan natin sa isang slide both number 1, no? Both cases. Okay? Para makita nyo agad kung ano ang pinagkakaiba nilang dalawa. Okay po? Now, Number 1, tinatanong tayo, how many units are deemed as good units? How do we compute for the number of good units? Ito po formula natin, no? So let's start with the original number of units of that job. Then, ide-deduct natin yung number of spoiled units. Magde-deduct din tayo ng number of defective units. Naintindihan? Sir, ano pinagkaiba ng spoiled at defective units? Bakit mo sila pinaghiwalay? Pag sinabi mong spoiled units, these are not reworkable anymore. So it's either itapon mo yan or ibenta mo na lang sa ibang tao. 'Di ba? Usually, ang mga spoiled units ay binibenta na lang sa mga junk shops eh. 'Di ba? Ganon yung nangyayari pag spoiled units yan. Pag defective units naman, may chances pang ma-rework siya. Dahil may chances siyang ma-rework, meron tayong last component, that is add number of defective units reworked. Ayan. May i-add back tayo sa formula natin. But take note, this only pertains to defective units that were successfully reworked, meaning na ayos, right? But yung spoiled units, hindi na yan marirework or hindi na yan maaayos. Ang tanging ginagawa na lang ng company sa mga spoiled units is either itapon or ibebenta sa ibang tao na lang, no? So yan, that will be your comprehensive formula for number of good units. So this will serve as our guide in computing number 1. Now, alam natin, problem number 3 deals with spoiled units. Hence, we will not find any defective units here, no? Sige, let's start. Ilan yung original number of units dito? 'Di ba 4,400? Case 1 muna tayo. Next, ilan daw ang spoiled coats? 400. Mag-minus tayo 400. Walang defective units, walang na-rework. Hence, what will be our answer for number 1? 4,000 units. Okay po? Now, regardless of whether the spoilage is inherent in production or due to customer specification, hindi niya maapektuhan yung computation ng ating number of good units. Hence, the same answer tayo, no? The same solution. Okay? So, ang sagot natin, whether case 1 or case 2 yan, 4,000 units na ang sagot ng number 1 natin. Alright? Next. Number 2. How much is credited to the work in process inventory account due to spoilage? Okay. So, may table ba? Wala. Walang table to. Sige. Number 1 tayo. Mamaya na si number 2. Sa case number 1, the spoilage is attributable to internal failure, right? Now, ang tinatanong sa atin sa number 2, magkano daw yung tatanggalin natin sa work in process? Magkano yung amount na tatanggalin natin? Okay? If the spoilage is due to internal failure, ang tatanggalin natin would be the total cost of the spoiled units. Okay? Pakitandaan yon. If the spoilage is due to internal failure, the amount that will be credited to the work in process inventory will be equal to the total cost of that spoiled units. Okay? Sir, bakit? Bakit total cost tatanggalin natin? We cannot charge the loss to our customer kasi wala siyang kasalanan. Unfair naman kung ang tatanggalin lang natin yung na-recover nating 12,000, di ba? Nabenta daw kasi yan sa jobber for 12,000. Unfair naman sa customer kung i-charge natin yung loss. Right? So, total cost po ang tatanggalin natin. So, for case number 1, how do we answer this? Ilan yung spoiled units natin? 400, tama? So, 400 units times. How much is the total cost per unit? Sir, nakabanggit sa problem 3, 112. Okay. Pero di ba pinaabantayan ko sa inyo yung overhead? It includes allowance for spoilage na 2 pesos. Ano treatment natin? As is or tatanggalin? Di ba pag inherent in production, anong sabi kanina? Include allowance for spoilage. But since it is already included in the first place, as is na po natin yan. Wala tayong gagalawin sa kanyang unit cost. So 400 units times 112 per unit. Ano sagot sa case 1? This will become 44,800. So yan po sagot natin sa case number 1, number 2. Okay? Then for the second case, the spoilage is attributable to customer specifications. So ibig sabihin, kaya ka nagkaroon ng loss units because of the specifications of the customer. Hence, anong gagawin natin? We charge the loss to the customer. Okay? So ano po sasagutin natin dito sa number 2? Sa number 2 ng case 2. Answer, equal to the amount actually recovered. So sagot natin is simply 12,000. Okay? Pag yan kasi ang tinanggal natin sa work in process, maiiwan sa cost ng job na yan yung loss. And sisingilin natin si customer doon. Di ba? Kasi unfair naman para sa company kung sa company pa rin i-charge yung loss. Eh, wala naman silang kasalanan. Tama po ba? Kaya ang sagot sa number 2, case 2, 12,000. Clear? And last one, number 3, what would be the unit cost of good coats produced on job 143? Oh, number 1. If the loss is attributable to internal failure, mame-maintain natin yung original unit cost niya. Kaya ang sagot sa number 1, 112 per unit. Yan agad ang sagot natin. Okay? Ayaw nyo maniwala? O, tignan natin ha, kung 112 per unit talaga ang sagot. So, ang una nating gagawin ay paki-compute yung original cost ng job. So, original cost ng job 143. So, nakapag-produce siya daw ng 4,400 coats times 112. Tama? So, magkano ito? Nasaan na yung ano ko? Calculate. Hindi na kaya ng mental math ni Sir ang ganyang computation. So, mag-calculate tayo. 44 times 112. So, magkano to guys? 400, 92, 800. Then, since meron tayong 400 spoiled coats, we will be deducting the total cost of 400 spoiled coats. Okay? Ito po yung naging sagot natin sa number 2 niya kanina. Eh, di ba, ang sagot natin sa number 2 niya kanina is 44,800. So, tanggalin po natin si 44,800. Then, how much is the adjusted cost of job 143? So, magkano to? Makakakuha tayo ng 448,000. Then, kindly divide your adjusted cost by the number of good units. So yung number 1 natin kanina, meron din pala siyang use, right? Kaya ako tinanong agad sa number 1, how many units are deemed as good units? Kasi yan po yung magiging denominator to compute for the adjusted unit cost of the job. Okay? So, divided by, ano sagot nga natin ulit kanina guys? 4,000, no? 4,000 units. So, divided by 4,000 units, how much is the adjusted unit cost? Magkano? 112. Naniniwala na? Kasi, again, if the loss is attributable to internal failure, tatanggalin, i-maintain natin yung kanyang original unit cost. Okay? Yon. Kaya, pansin nyo, 112 per unit pa rin sagot natin. Okay? Next. Second case. If the spoilage or the loss is attributable to customer specifications, there is no way but to compute it the long way or the long method. Actually, kung anong ginawa natin kanina, yun din gagawin natin sa kanya. Hindi tayo makakapag-shortcut dito guys kapag due to customer specifications. Okay? So let's start again. Let's start all over again. Let's start with your original cost. Ilang quotes ulit ito? 4,400, no? 4,400 units times magkano ang unit cost? 112. Pag sinabi nyo sa akin 112, magkakamali na tayo. Sir, bakit? Di ba yun yung given sa problem 3? Yes, but tignan nyo ulit yung overhead. It includes an allowance for spoilage na 2 pesos. Anong sabi natin kanina sa discussion? Kapag ang spoilage or loss ay attributable sa customer specification, do we include or do we not include allowance for spoilage? Answer, we do not include. Hence, i-adjust natin yung 112. Pakitanggal yung 2 pesos. Magkano na lang? 110. Naiintindihan ba guys? No? Ayun. So, huwag kayong magmadali sa analysis pag ganyan. Naintindihan? Di ba? Mamaya biglang hindi nyo napapansin may nasasama pala kayong allowance for spoilage dito sa case 2. Mali na yung magiging sagot. Right? So magkano yon? That will be 4,400 units times 110. Is that for magkano to? Computing ko na nga lang. 484,000, right? Less, ano yung tinatanggal natin sa work in process? Is it the total cost of the spoiled units or the amount recovered? It will be the sales value or the amount recovered, no? Sales value of 400 spoiled coats. Magkano yon? Di ba 12K lang? Yan yung sagot sa number 2 kanina. So how much is the adjusted cost ng job? 472,000, right? Then divide this by number of good units. So divided by 4,000 units, ano ang magiging adjusted unit cost ng job? That will be 118. So ang sagot naman po natin sa number 3, case number 2 is 118. Obserbahan nyo, biglang tumaas yung unit cost. Bakit? Because of the loss chargeable to the customer. Are we clear, class? So I hope nagkakaintindihan po tayong lahat. Pwede tayong mag-proceed sa next problem. So the last problem of job order costing is problem number 4. This time, this is a case of defective units naman. Para makita nyo ano ang pagkakaiba nila ni spoiled units. So ganun pa rin, we have two cases. Case 1 is attributable to internal failure. Then case number 2 is attributable to customer specification. Whitney companies incurred the following costs on job 001 for the manufacturing of 400 motors. So yung given sa atin is total cost na pala agad, no? Inspection of job 001 disclosed that 10 units are defective. All the 10 defective units were reworked and incurred the following direct costs. Yan. So since pareho pa rin naman yung tinatanong per case, sabay nating sagutan. Okay? Natatandaan pa ba yung ating formula for the number of good units? 'Di ba yun yung original number of units minus number of spoiled units minus number of defective units. Then we will be adding back number of defective units rework. So ito po yung magiging number of good units natin, mga kapatid. Right? Oh. Ilang units daw ito? 400 originally, right? Tapos, wala namang spoiled units, so 0 natin yan. There were 10 defective units, so tanggalin natin siya. Then, lahat daw ng 10 units ay na-rework naman, so add back lang natin si 10. So ano sagot natin for number 1? Still 400. Okay? Ganon din po sa case 2. Same lang yung computations. Okay? So whether the loss is attributable to internal failure or due to customer specifications, it would not affect the computation of your good units. Are we clear? Number 2, what amount of rework cost is to be debited to work in process inventory account? First step class na naman, nasanay na talaga ako. So, let's compute for the total rework cost muna. Okay po? Total rework cost. Sir, paano natin kinocompute ang rework cost? Actually, alam niyo na to, no? We simply add all the 3 elements of a product cost. That will be direct materials, direct labor, and manufacturing overhead. Generally, the manufacturing overhead here is applied manufacturing overhead. Okay po? So this will be your total rework cost. Ang problem class, given lang sa atin ay direct materials, direct labor. So 200 pesos at direct labor na 320. We do not know magkano yung overhead na ito. Hindi naman po pwede na yung materials at labor lang ang kasali sa computation ng rework cost. Kasi tuwing may tinatrabaho ka, you will always incur manufacturing overhead. Hindi mo maiiwasan si manufacturing overhead. Okay po? So, how do we determine the applied overhead in this case? We will be getting the overhead application rate from your original data, which is yung first table, no? So nakita natin, 'di ba, may factory overhead daw na 24. Tapos kung i-base natin siya sa direct labor cost na 16, what's the overhead application rate? So, sorry, napindot. So kailangan nating alamin yung overhead application rate. I-base lang natin yung overhead sa direct labor. That will be 2,400 divided by 16. Magkano ito? That is 150% of direct labor costs. So your overhead application rate is 150% of direct labor costs. Magkano direct labor cost nung pag-rework? 320. So, simply multiply 320 by 1.5. Magkano yung applied overhead natin dito? That will be 480. Yan po ilalagay natin sa table. Ngayon, kompleto na siya. Magkano total rework cost natin? 1,000 pesos. Okay? Sir, yan na ba yung sagot? Not yet. Case number 1. Kinompute lang po muna natin yung total rework cost. Since case number 1 is that attributable daw sa internal failure yung defective units, what will be the treatment for the rework cost? Answer, we charge that to the production. Hence, magkano daw ang ide-debit sa work in process inventory account for case 1? 0. Hindi natin yan i-charge sa customer natin. Okay? Kasi kapag dinebit natin yan sa work in process inventory, sinasabi mong i-charge natin yan sa customer. Mali yun. Okay? Sa case 1, 0 po ang sagot ng number 2 niya. Pero pagdating sa case number 2, what amount of rework cost is to be debited to work in process inventory account? Magiging sagot natin 1,000 na. Why? Because since that is attributable to exacting specifications, we will be charging the 1,000 to the customer na. Okay? So ito po sagot natin sa number 2, case 1, case 2. Nagkakaintindihan po ba tayo, guys? Okay? Then, for number 3, let me just erase this. Yan. So for number 3, what would be the new unit cost of job 001? So let's start with case number 1. Magkano yung original cost ng job? So original cost is 5,320. Mag-a-add po ba tayo ng rework cost dito sa case number 1? Answer, no. So our adjusted cost is 5,320. Right? Divide this by number of good units. Ilan nga ulit number of good units natin? 400 ba yun? So divided by 400 units, ano po ang magiging adjusted unit cost natin? That will be, is that 13.30? Let me just recheck. Yes, 13.30 per unit. So that's for your case number 1. Then for case number 2, the same formula. Let's start with your original cost. Still, 5,320. Tama? Wala naman kasing nabanggit with regard to allowance for losses. Then we assume na walang naka-include. Diba? Yun. Then, may i-add na ba tayong rework cost dito? Yes. 1,000. So add po tayo ng 1,000. What's the adjusted cost of the job? Magiging 6,320. Then divided by number of good units, which is 400 units pa rin. So what will be your adjusted unit cost for case 2? That will be 15.80 per unit. Nagkakaintindihan po tayo. Mapapansin niyo ulit, tumaas ulit yung unit cost sa number 2 kasi chinarge natin sa customer yung rework cost na 1,000. Okay? So, makikita niyo yung pagkakaiba sa computations kapag ang case ay spoiled units at defective units. Pag spoiled units, we are removing. No? We are removing the value of the spoiled units from the job costs. Pero pagdating sa defective units, nag-a-add tayo ng rework costs. Yon ang pagkakaiba nila. Okay? So I hope everything is clear for job order costing because dyan po natatapos ang first topic natin. Yan. Yan. So I hope na enjoy nyo po si job order costing. Okay?